Long story short, it was a bad time. Or AIs Don't Forget by Peacockgirl. Chapter 8. Bonus. Pepper. Happy opens the car door and Peter slides into the back without a word. His eyes widen when Tony slips in next to him instead of riding shotgun. There's no way in hell Tony's letting the kid out of his sight until he's tucked safely into his bedroom at the lake. "What, you think I'd rather sit next to Happy than my favourite spiderling?" Tony says. It teases a smile out of Peter, as intended, but that smile fades quickly. Tony waits for a witty retort that never comes. He'd take a quip that wasn't witty, just to show that the kid was trying. But he stays silent, except for a heavy breath, wet with congestion and tears. So Tony slides closer to Pete and pulls him into his shoulder. The kid's face is cold against his neck, even though the heat was blazing in the medbay. Even with the drugs, he should be fighting an infection, which would raise the temperature. But somehow that doesn't seem to be the case. "Up the heat, Hap," Tony says. "And how about some music? Just keep the volume low." "Got it, boss." Tony considers raising the barrier for privacy, but he can see Happy's concern when they lock eyes through the rearview mirror. It's bad enough he woke Happy up in the middle of the night and is now asking him to drive halfway across the state of New York. If Happy can't see Peter, he'll worry more. And honestly, Peter might be closer to Happy now than Tony, so he doesn't suppose Peter has anything he needs to hide from one man more than the other. Tony runs his hand through Peter's damp curls, wishing there was more he could do. The kid is alive and remembered and safe, but clearly that isn't enough. The cloud of misery enveloping him scares Tony because he's never seen Peter like this. Moody, sure, petulant, occasionally a low-key sad, best described as bummed, but never this dark night of the soul shit. Tony spent years of his life in that god-awful season, but he doesn't know how to pull someone else out of it. He hadn't actually been too successful pulling himself out of it. Someone always had to do it for him. Sometimes it had been the same kid he's holding. "Is there anything I can do, Pete?" he whispers, wishing he didn't need to ask, wishing he could just fix this, build a suit, invent an element, ace a mission. Peter just shakes his head, and Tony can feel that his nose is dripping. "You've already done so much. I'm grateful. It's just..." But whatever it is must be too much to articulate, because Peter trails off. Tony slides his hand down and rubs it across Peter's back. "Hey, it's okay. No need to explain. You're exhausted, you're sad. This night's been an emotional train wreck. Cry on my shoulder all you want. That's what I'm here for." Tony is proud of himself for that little speech. Thank you, years of therapy and fatherhood. But Peter hitches out a sob, and Tony's at a loss until Peter whispers, "May used to say that too." Tony can't figure out what to say to that. "Shit, kid. I'm sorry." "So am I." Tony intends to stay awake and watch the kid, but his old man body has other ideas. He wakes when Happy stops the car and blinks out at his beloved sanctuary. "Home sweet home," he says as he turns to Peter, realising how insensitive that is 2 seconds too late. Peter's staring blankly ahead, having pulled away some when Tony was out, and leaned himself against the door of the car. There's a vacantness to his expression that sends shivers down Tony's spine. Then Happy's opening the car door. Peter pitches to the side before catching himself. Happy's eyes flick to Tony, but he reaches out and steadies the kid, helping him out of the car as if Peter is a fragile old woman. Just like he's never been truly sad, Peter has never been fragile. The kid can down planes, stop buses with his bare hands, get hit by a train and keep on moving. The only time he wasn't invincible was when he was crumbling in Tony's arms, but that genocidal shit had downed super soldiers, and Tony can't think of that now, oh god. Tony drags himself out of the car and jogs to the front door. He's ready to give Friday the access authorizations when the door bursts open and all he can see is Pepper, arms crossed, pyjamas wrinkled, hair pulled back too tight for this time of night, and an absolutely wild look in her eyes he hasn't evoked from her in quite some time. Well, shit. Anthony Edward Stark, where the hell have you been? Pepper has a way of getting quieter the angrier she is, just the opposite of everyone else on the planet, and it's terrifying. She glances past Tony to Happy and Peter, and confusion hijacks her face. What exactly is going on here? He hears Peter say, "This is a mistake. I don't belong here," and wheels around. "This is not a mistake, Underoos," he assures, trying to keep his voice level, soothing. In hindsight, he probably should have called his wife at least once tonight. "And you're not going to make Happy drive all the way back to the city right now, are you? No siree." "But Miss Potts..." "You let me worry about Mrs. Stark. I've been all kinds of dumb tonight, but that's not your fault. Let's just get you to bed." He turns back to Pepper and flashes her a desperate look. He'd go for charming if he thought he had any chance of managing it, but he's not at his finest. "Give me 5 minutes, Pep, and I promise I'll explain everything." She breathes heavily and glares back at him and caves. 4. It's going to be more than 5, but he nods anyway and leads his sad little entourage into the house, to the spare bedroom he'd designed for Peter. This is not how he'd intended to show it to him, but so much about tonight is tragically wrong and perfectly right. "Here we go, bud," he says, pulling back the red comforter and blue sheets. "Bathroom's through there," he gestures. "And Fry can help you with anything else you need, including me. Just have her call and I'll be here before you can say Iron Man saves the day." He watches Peter wince as he toes off his shoes and swings his legs onto the bed. Tony pulls the pill bottle from his pocket. "Sure you didn't want a few of these?" Peter shakes his head, his eyes wide. "I'm okay," he whispers, his voice so wrecked it hurts Tony just hearing it. "I don't like seeing you in pain, kid." Peter's shoulders raise in a sluggish, defeated shrug. "I'm used to it." Tony's heart wrenches and shatters with the force of a shrapnel bomb. "You're killing me, Bambino." The endearment shocks both of them, but Tony needs something soft and fond, with no edge of sarcasm or history. He sits down beside his kid and shakes out 2 pills. "Please, Pete," he begs. "You don't have to hurt anymore." He hears movement from behind him and turns to see Happy place a glass of water on the nightstand. "Thank you," he mouths, before turning back to Peter, who is staring at him like a mirage about to disappear. "I'll still be here when you wake up. I'll still remember you. This is real and nothing's going to change after you go to sleep, except you'll feel a lot better." "Promise?" Tony leans over until their foreheads touch, his real hand cupping Peter's neck. "Promise," he says, pulling back enough to press a kiss to Peter's brow, trying to pour everything he's never said but should have into the gesture, his overwhelmingly desperate need for this angel child to know his worth and be okay. Peter pulls away, takes the pills and downs half the water. "Thank you." Tony kisses him again and then pushes him down against the mound of pillows, pulling the covers over him, then tucking the edge under the mattress. "Are you tucking me in?" "Wow, such a genius," he shoots back, encouraged by the trace of incredulous life in Peter's question. Then he crosses to the closet and pulls out 2 fluffy blankets and a decorative quilt, and begins stretching them over his spiderling one by one. Peter looks appreciative at first, but protests when Tony starts towards the closet again. "What are you doing?" "Looking for more blankets. You're cold." "You're ridiculous." There aren't any more blankets in the closet, and Peter is under 6 layers already, so Tony accepts defeat. "Just get some sleep, kiddo. You'll feel better in the morning and we'll sort all of this out." A huge yawn shudders through him, and Peter settles back with droopy eyes. "Technically it is the morning." "Then we'll figure it out this afternoon, or evening, or tomorrow. Sleep as much as you want. Whenever you wake up, solution time." "And you'll be here?" "Always, kiddo. From now on, I'll always be here." There is a faint trace of a smile on Peter's face when the drugs claim him, but as Tony wheels out of the room, barely remembering to tell Friday to cut the lights, all he feels is ill. His heart's beating too fast, but it's lightness in his head that's most concerning. The trembling in his legs and the way the room is spinning. "What the fuck?" he mutters, leaning hard against the hallway as soon as he hears Peter's door click shut. "What the fuck happened to my kid?" "Tony," Happy hisses. "He can hear you." Tony shakes his head, which turns out to be a bad idea. He leans against the wall a little harder. "No, he can't. Room's completely soundproof. Designed it for him. At the time I was just spiralling, but hey, worked out now, huh? This is not how I imagined his first sleepover." He tries to breathe deeply, but his chest is too tight. "Friday, doll, what the hell is wrong with me? This doesn't feel like a normal panic attack. Feels like I'm going to pass out." "Your blood pressure is quite low, boss, and I expect your blood sugar is as well. You shouldn't be exerting yourself after losing so much blood." "What happened to you?" Happy hisses, slinging his arm around Tony's shoulder and dragging him to the living room couch like an invalid. Tony would protest if he didn't feel so shaky, but he accepts the help instead of falling over in the foyer. "You didn't tell me you'd lost blood." "Had to put it in the kid. He was bleeding out. Fucking horror show." Tony breathes deeply, trying to steady himself. He is Iron Man, damn it, and this is no time for his body to fail. Suddenly something cold is pressed into his hand and Pepper is at his side with a glass of orange juice and a box of Morgan's animal crackers. "Drink this and have a cookie," she commands, still eerily quiet. "And then you are going to tell me what the hell is going on here. I think I've waited long enough." "Yes, honey," he says, gulping down the juice. He feels his body start to level out, but Pep's anxiety is ratcheting up his own. Every time he closes his eyes, he still sees Peter's expression in the car, so damn empty. "So, you know," he finally says once the juice is gone and half the cookies as well, "how I was rambling on a few months ago about missing a kid." He tries to smile, but Pep's harsh expression doesn't change. Tony tilts his head towards Peter's room. "Ta-da!" "That's not a kid, Tony. That's a young adult." "He's 17, so technically still a kid." "That doesn't make it better," Pepper snaps. "I'm bothered by the fact that you see nothing wrong with sneaking a strange teenager into our home at 4 a.m. while our daughter's asleep." "Whoa, Peter would never hurt Morgan." "How am I supposed to know that? A heads up, Tony. I just need a heads up before you do something that affects our entire family, so we can discuss it like the rational, married adults that we are." "He was dying, Pep," Tony shouts, and the force of that hits him anew. The blood and the panic and all the time wasted arguing with Friday, and the fact that in that moment Tony hadn't even been able to comprehend how wrecked he would have been if the kid hadn't made it. "He was dying, and then once I realised everything he'd been through, it felt like I was dying, so I forgot to call. My bad. Sorry." He knows, as soon as the words are out of his mouth, that he needs to calm down, because he can't fuck this up. He needs Peter, yes, but he needs Pepper too, and Morgan, and he needs to build a life where they can all coexist, but this isn't going particularly well. He's fucking exhausted. He feels like he's run a marathon, and his body is failing him, but worst of all is the pain of seeing Peter so wrecked, of not knowing how to fix him when what he really needs is May. And May is gone. And Tony is all Peter has left, which was never enough to begin with. "Is he all right?" Pepper asks, finally the proper amount of concern, and Tony exhales hard. "Physically he's out of the woods. I got to him just in time. Just barely. But he's hurting, Pep. He's hurting and I don't know what to do about that." Then suddenly there are hands on either side of his face, and Pepper's forehead is pressed against his own. "Hey, Tony, shh. It's okay. You're okay. He's okay. Just, can you start at the beginning here? I just don't understand why you didn't tell me about him sooner, if you've known since you built this house. It's not like I don't know what you were like 17 years ago. Hell, I probably escorted his mother out." Tony groans and looks up at the ceiling. "Fry, care to share those paternity results again?" "Certainly, boss. According to the 6 paternity tests in my databank, you are not biologically related to Peter Parker. However, approximately 27% of his genetic code has been rewritten by his arachnid enhancements. All the time he and Fry rehash the paternity tests, she has never mentioned that. Wait, hold up. Are you saying the bike could have changed his DNA enough that the tests are wrong? Considering the lack of similarities in the rest of his genetic code, that seems extremely unlikely. I am just pointing out that his DNA has been altered in ways my programming does not understand. It shouldn't hurt less every time he hears he is not Peter's actual father. It doesn't make Tony love him any less. It still hurts. Arachnid enhancements, Pepper mutters. He's Spider-Man. Despite everything, he's proud of her for catching on so quickly. He shifts his attention to Pepper, shaking off the lingering vision of telling Peter that he still had family in the world, of imagining how he would react. He probably wouldn't be thrilled he was a product of Tony's raging libido and terrible choices, anyway. Right in one. Which is why he was dying in the middle of the night. Exactly. Tony leans back against the couch. Patrol gone wrong, he says, shuddering at the memory. Used to do this thing kind of often, but I'm out of practice. I didn't know you knew who Spider-Man is. No one knows who Spider-Man is. Pepper pulls away from him. Tony doesn't like the wounded way she looks at him, or the coldness that crept into her tone, as if she's trying to put distance between them to steel herself against whatever comes next. He's hurt her so many times, but he thought he was done with that. I don't know why you feel you couldn't trust me with this. It would have been helpful if you could have tracked him down during that drone debacle. Thanks to that damn drone debacle and fucking Quentin Beck, the whole world knew who Spider-Man was. Tony snarls. That was the problem. Tony, Happy warns, but Pepper doesn't even flinch. I'm not following, she says evenly. He massages his temple, trying to calm down. His anger's all misplaced tonight. There's too much of his old self, desperate to act up and lash out. He knows he needs to be better than this, wants to be, but all his nerves are exposed. It's a long story. I'm not sure even I understand. But Beck exposed Peter as Spider-Man during that bullshit video, and it ruined the kid's life. He went to Grindelwald for a spell to make people forget. Grindelwald? Strange, Happy explains. Dr. fucking Strange, screw up supreme. Somehow the spell broke the multiverse, got the kid's aunt killed, and ended up making the entire world forget Peter Parker ever existed. Even me. Pepper's lips are pursed, her eyes narrowed. The explanation you're going with is magical amnesia. Could I make this up if I tried? Look, thankfully the spell didn't work on AIs. Friday still knew who Peter was, and she alerted me that he was in danger. I didn't believe her at first either, but she's got tons of footage. Tony realises he probably should have started with that. There's no better explanation than the kid himself. There's no way Pepper can think he's a danger to Morgan if she just sees him. Play something convincing, Fry. Underoos's greatest hits. Just the thought of rewatching some of his happiest memories with Peter soothes Tony a little. But nothing traumatic. We're not trying to get Pepper to remember right now. I don't have the energy for another panic attack. Certainly, boss. A hollow screen shimmers down from the ceiling, showing his private lab in Manhattan in his new penthouse after he sold the tower. Whoa! Peter's enthusiasm is high-pitched and breathless, his gaze scanning his surroundings with awe and intelligence, and Tony is struck by how young he looks. Technically, he is still a child now, but somehow in 3 years he's aged 3 decades. Tony would sacrifice that maturity for innocence it stole in a heartbeat if he had the choice. I cannot believe I'm in your private lab. This is so awesome. Like, I could just crawl up on the ceiling and die. Are you sure I can be in here? The Tony in the video, far younger too, is not nearly as endeared as he should be. Seeing as this is indeed my private lab, and standing next to you implies that I am both aware of and okay with your presence here, I think it's fine. He's looking almost anywhere but at Peter. Tony remembers with a flood of shame how he'd been put off by Peter's earnestness and was beginning to regret inviting the kid into his space. But he had looked at Peter when he asked, "Now that crawling up on the ceiling thing, is that just an expression kids use nowadays, or is that something spiderlings actually do?" And Peter had grinned, that same bright, uninhibited, wonderful smile that Tony would eventually come to live for. Even that first time, it had already started to work wonders. "Wouldn't you like to know?" The damnedest thing, Tony had realised hours later, after Peter had gone home after countless experiments on his suit and 0 experiments on his freaky spider powers, was that he did. The scene changes. This time Tony is on 1 floor above the lab, staring out at the Manhattan skyline with a glass of scotch on the coffee table in front of him. "Boss, Peter asked me to remind you that he's been in the lab for the past half hour." Shit. When Tony raised his hand to scrub over his face, it is shaking. Forgot it was Thursday. Shit. In the present, Tony wants to challenge Fry for including this particular memory. Pep doesn't need reminding what an arsehole he was, but Fry did save his kid's life today, so he lets her pick the movie. "Tell him I need to cancel the internship today." "I sort of figured." Video Tony flinches at the sight of Peter in the doorway. He pushes the untouched scotch forward so forcefully it almost skids off the table. "What are you doing up here?" "Friday told me where you were. She said you've been staring out the window for the past hour. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Even now Tony's heart wrenches. In the recording he emits a surprised choking sound that startles everyone except Peter, who approaches slowly, eventually perching on the arm of the neighbouring couch, deliberately not looking too directly at Tony or the booze. "That's a little outside your job description." Peter shrugs. It's clear he's gotten more at ease around Tony from the first day in the lab. It's also clear he finds this situation uncomfortable. "Friday said there wasn't anyone else here to check up on you, so—" "Didn't realise my AI was such a gossip," Tony snaps. Peter shrugs again and picks at a hole in his jeans. "You know, I've been excited all week because we've known each other a year. I may have brought cupcakes to celebrate, but I forgot that a year ago wasn't really a good time for you. I should have realised you'd want to be alone today." Hologram Tony just stares. Exhausted Dad Tony feels his heart swell and stutter and wishes he could go back to Pete's room and wrap the kid in his arms. "You kidding me, kid? You find me moping around and apologising for not anticipating that I'd forget about you?" Peter cocks his head like a golden retriever, his Bambi eyes wide. "Yes?" "You're something else." "Is that a bad thing?" "No, I guess not." Peter slides off the couch, his palms smoothing down his legs. "I'll do my homework in the lab until Happy comes to pick me up. I won't touch anything while you're not there, I promise." He turns away while Tony keeps sitting there, dumbfounded. But once he reaches the door, he hesitates, turning back. Tony hadn't realised at the time all the emotions that flickered over Peter's face before settling into a steely resolve. "After my parents died, I told my aunt and uncle I wanted to be alone a lot. Except I didn't mean it. I just didn't want them to judge me for crying all the time. Luckily, they weren't very good at listening." Tony stares too long, everything about Peter's vulnerability making him squirm, yet he finds himself asking anyway. "What did they do?" "They'd drag me into the living room and order pizza, and we'd all watch movies together. When they turned off all the lights, they couldn't even see me crying. It still sucked, but it was better than being alone." "So what you're saying is you want me to order us a pizza?" "No, I mean, I would never presume that." "Like Friday said, there's no one else here, and Happy's not due back for another 3 hours. I could eat, and I know you're always starving." Tony still doesn't know, all these years later, why exactly he did it. He had no idea how one pizza would turn into dozens, how one destructive night deferred would turn into one of a new life of almost healthy choices, how one earnest, awkward spiderling would build a web around his heart that could not be dissolved. Maybe Peter had just been right. It did suck to be alone, Tony'd had too much loneliness, and he didn't like that this caring, brilliant kid had too. "What do you want on your pizza?" Peter answers far too quickly, like he's afraid that Tony will take it back. If he'd waited too long, Tony might have. "Ham and pineapple." "Get out. Internship's cancelled. That's a travesty." "Come on, Mr. Stark, have you ever tried it? It might sound gross, and look kinda gross, but it's so good." "You're going to have to eat the whole pie, because I'm getting myself pepperoni like a normal person." "Deal." Peter's smile looks like the one when he first walked into the lab, and their fates entwine just a little bit tighter. "I'm a little afraid to ask now, but do you have a favourite movie to go with that abysmal pizza?" They've already come a long way, because Peter isn't fazed by the harshness Tony loads into his words to counteract all the softness they've been tiptoeing around. "Have you ever seen Star Wars?" The scene shifts again. Tony is surprised to see his private office at SI, which Peter had never visited. He's also surprised when May Parker walks in. Happy emits some sad, gasping sound, and Tony is struck by the realisation that this woman is truly gone. Even when Peter had told him about her death, it hadn't seemed real beyond the bounds of Peter's grief. Only now does Tony fully process the loss. She'd been more than Peter's guardian. She'd been a hell of a woman, compassionate and fierce. "I need you to be my backup guardian for Peter," she says without preamble, and Tony is almost as shocked now as he'd been back then. He never expected to relive this particular moment. "What?" Tony splutters. "How did you even get in here? Are you dying? Why didn't Peter tell me you were dying? Is it cancer? I can get you the best oncologists, experts from anywhere in the world, no matter the cost." "I'm not dying, Tony." He tilts his head, trying to judge if she looks paler than normal. "Are you sure?" "Well, we're never really sure, are we? But I feel perfectly fine." Tony remembers how he'd felt like he was in a tornado, with sudden shifts in altitude and absolutely no control. "Then where is this coming from? It's not April 1st, is it? Did Pete put you up to this? I know we've got a bit of a prank war going on, but this is not funny. You're wearing a secret camera, aren't you? He's back at the apartment watching this right now. This is too far, you menace." He leaps to his feet, shaking his finger at May, who stares at him like he's the crazy one. "Tony, he's not watching. I'm serious." "You cannot be serious." "Trust me, I wouldn't be here if I had any other option." "If you're not dying, why are you here at all?" Richard and Mary didn't expect to die in a plane crash on the way home from some conference, but thank God they'd named Ben as Peter's godfather. Any time I see something awful about foster care, I have nightmares about what could have happened to Peter had he gotten tossed in the system. Tony rubs at his temple, wishing he had something stronger than coffee to drink, even though he hasn't had a drop of alcohol in almost 2 years, largely because of the same kid whose guardianship is currently making him spiral. "I'm not following. Did you binge watch some Law and Order and suddenly think I could take care of Peter if something happened to you?" "How many safety protocols did you put on that suit of his?" May asks. 37, he answers without having to think. "I've got 4 more in development and another 2 I'm still workshopping." "Seems like you're already looking out for Peter." "Spider-Man. I'm looking out for Spider-Man." May crosses her arms, her expression half smug, half murderous. "So that's all you care about then? The teenage superhero you can call on to fight your battles when you're outnumbered?" He surges forward. "Of course not. Christ, I'm not just using Peter because of his powers. We've got a good thing going here, with you taking care of Peter and me taking care of Spider-Man. Why mess with perfection? If anything happens to you, I'll still be around to help with the hero stuff." Because it's not as simple as being one or the other. Even when he's wearing the suit, he's still Peter. Even when he is at school, Spider-Man is always there, telling him to be reckless and self-sacrificing. If something happens to me, he's going to need some place to go to. You're the only one equipped to understand both sides of him. Besides, it's kind of karma since you're the one who inspired him to be a hero in the first place. Tony smirks, trying to find his way back to smug, familiar ground. Hang on, do I have to take responsibility for every kid who wants to be Iron Man? Because my penthouse is big, but it's not that big. This goes a little deeper than that. Tony stares at May blankly. Did Peter really never tell you? Tell me what, I could tell he was a huge Iron Man fan. The kid's got an awful poker face, but he never admitted as much. You saved him once, when he was just a kid, at the Stark Expo, when the drones attacked. Tony remembers the ice that shot down his back. He was there, at that shit show. We got separated in the chaos. Peter was wearing this Iron Man mask that he absolutely adored, and the little hero thought he could take down a drone. Luckily, you showed up just in time. You probably don't remember. Holy shit. Because Tony did, and Tony had. It had been just one moment in a series of heroics, but later, once the adrenaline high had worn off, and he began to process what had happened, he'd had a full-blown panic attack about almost seeing an adoring toddler blown to smithereens right in front of him. The nice work kid was Peter. So you do remember. Tony drops back onto his chair. Even in the recording, the harshness of his breath is evident. I'm not going to do this. Peter deserves someone better. Considering you're pale as a sheet over something that happened 7 years ago that Peter obviously survived, I think you'll do just fine. He'd known even then that he did care. He'd accepted that, reluctantly, some time after Peter begrudgingly confessed he'd lifted a parking garage off himself. And Tony's first thought wasn't, how strong is this kid, but, oh my god, are you okay? His next thought had been how that little incident had been his fault, followed by a string of colourful expletives. It doesn't exactly make him more qualified for what May is asking for. I don't know how to be a father, he protests. All I learned from my old man was all the ways I'd rather not fuck up someone else. May takes off her glasses. It makes her look softer, less intimidating. Then don't do those things to Peter. You think Ben and I had any idea what we were doing when we were suddenly responsible for a grieving 6-year-old? No one knows how to be a parent until they have a kid. Then you just figure it out. And you are a genius. She pauses. Or so I've heard. Not sure I've seen it. Ha ha. I'll have my lawyers draw up the papers. May pauses again, and then grins. I've always wanted to say that. I don't have any lawyers, though. I hoped yours could help take care of that. Yeah, sure, he says, almost dismissively, when the situation calls for anything but. Sure I can borrow your lawyers, or sure you're okay with being Peter's backup guardian? All of it, he says in a daze. Tony remembers knowing that he should probably take some time to consider and agreeing to it anyway. He knew that the panic was not likely to fade, but the die had already been cast. May was right, and Tony was invested. He'd shot a prayer to the universe that he would never be called on in this way. Now May is gone and his kid is broken, and Tony wants him so desperately, but that doesn't make him good enough. Then the scene changes one more time, and they are in the middle of a battlefield. Tony's heart clenches, but it isn't Titan. It's upstate New York. The footage is taken from Peter's suit cam, but Tony wishes it was his, because he'd give anything to see the look on Peter's face as he rambles about space battles and dust and wizard portals, with not a trace of the PTSD that has plagued Tony for 5 years. Instead, Tony watches himself rendered practically speechless before he finally pulls the kid into a long-delayed hug. This is nice, Peter says, and Tony holds on even though the world's going to hell around them, and every second is precious. But every second is precious, and Tony holds on. Then the hologram goes dark. Tony is glad Friday ended with that scene, because he and Peter had both been so happy. Happy breaks the silence first. May never told me she asked you to do that. Tony scrubs a hand across his face. He wants to slink back into his spiderling's room and wrap him in another back-from-the-dead strength hug. Yeah, well, she might as well just have been trying to give me a heart attack so I'd stop being a bad influence. He breathes out hard from his nose. His body still feels off, but it might just be run-of-the-mill exhaustion at this point. Would you believe Pete still never told me it was him at the expo? Your May Parker was that May Parker? Pepper asks, pointing at the now empty space in front of them. Happy nods with an odd grimace that might be an attempt to hold back tears. Tony knows he cannot put this off any longer. He has to stay here, Pep, he declares, unable to quite look her in the face, but all he sees when he closes his eyes is Peter, dead-eyed in the car, Peter bleeding out in the most depressing apartment he has ever seen, Peter shrugging off the fact that he's used to constant pain. I know it's not fair for me to decide that without consulting you, but that kid has been through hell with no one by his side for 6 months. He needs me. Even if May hadn't asked, I'd still need to do this. Honestly, I might need him more than he needs me. Tony... Pepper reaches out to still his flitting hands and slides closer to him on the couch so their thighs are pressed together. It's only then that Tony realises his leg is jittering up and down. Of course he can stay. His neck whips towards her with cartoon speed. You mean that? She nods. Most of her disapproving anger has melted away, but there is still something stern when she says, as long as he isn't a threat to Morgan. Tony starts breathing again. Of course he isn't. He's the kindest, politest teenager you'll ever meet. He's just as likely to be helping an old lady cross the street or rescuing a cat from a tree as breaking up a robbery. He isn't anything like me at all. Well, I wouldn't say that, Happy interjects. Hogan, Tony hisses. But Happy presses on. That time I picked him up in the Netherlands. I swear it was just like watching you when he designed that suit. Only difference is he confused AC/DC with Led Zeppelin. All that time in the lab and you couldn't teach him that. Happy fibs, kid isn't like me at all. He's a baby Steve Rogers, such a Boy Scout. Pepper shakes her head, her thumb tracing across the back of Tony's hand. You are aware that I wouldn't have married you if I wasn't fond of many of your qualities. Thought you were just in it for my body parts. On that note, I really ought to get some sleep, Happy says, attempting to make a quick exit. Morgan will be up in a few hours, but I'll try to keep her out of the den, Pepper warns. Thanks, Hap, Tony offers, for getting there so quickly. He swallows. And for being there for him when I couldn't. Thank God for your crazy AIs. Amen to that. Tony looks towards the ceiling, an absurd tic he never used to have until he got used to Peter doing it, mostly to drive him crazy. I owe you a raise, baby girl. You're the hero of the hour. I encouraged you to find Peter approximately 5 hours ago, and you do not pay me at all. Seems like an oversight. I give you some time off, but I can't live without you. Tony turns to Happy. I need you to clean out Peter's apartment. He won't like the thought of his mask just lying there. If Karen hadn't reached out to Friday... They both shudder at the thought. You got it, boss. Happy slips off to the pull-out couch in the den, and Pepper leads Tony to their bedroom. Tony's too tired to shuck off his clothes, so he collapses on the bed fully dressed. Pep situates more gracefully beside him, pulling his head into her lap and raking her nails gently through his hair. He lets out a long sigh but focuses on the ceiling instead of closing his eyes. Thank you, he says. And then, I'm sorry. The words are too trite to encompass all he means, but they're all he can manage. How well did I know him? She asks, continuing to draw patterns across his scalp. Tony still can't believe how well Pepper's taking this, all things considered. Not all that well, he admits. But he was in the lab quite a lot, and sometimes the penthouse, so you saw him around. Used to say he was good for me, and I'd get all uncomfortable. He wishes he'd been confident enough in his feelings to bring the two most important parts of his life together. But he'd been ashamed how invested he'd been in Peter, and only Happy had known the extent of it. I talked a lot about him after the snap. Tony pauses, trying to gather himself. This is the bit that Pepper really needs to understand, anyway. He died in my arms on Titan, and when I came back I was such a wreck.
His aunt was gone too, his friends. So you told me to tell you stories so that you could help keep his memory alive. Then Morgan came and I realised he wasn't just a kid, he was my kid. I'd kept him at arm's length because I was too scared of that, and by the time I realised it wasn't so scary, it was too late.
And so you got him back, Pep says, already 3 steps ahead of him, per usual.
Yeah, and then this happened and I lost him again.
But you found him. I knew you'd figured out what you were missing. Tony thinks he should be more relieved. He had been back at the med bay. He'd held on to Peter, all those memories swirling between them, and considered it a victory. But he knows the war isn't over now.
He's here. He's safe, but he's not okay. He and his aunt were so close, and he's been alone with that grief for so long. I don't know how to be what he needs.
I think Morgan would beg to differ, and so would I.
I love him, that's not the problem, but all the emotional stuff.
You are a good father, Tony. Pepper's hands slide down to cradle his face. It's only when her thumb moves under his eye that he realises he's been crying. And a good man, and you know too damn much about what he's gone through. It'll be hard, but you'll help him through it. He wants to believe it, but something inside him resists. This is too important to cave to his vanity.
I don't want him to be like I was. I've been afraid of that for years, but tonight was like looking in a mirror.
So what did you need then that you never got? Tony reaches up and tugs Pepper down till she's lying beside him and he can pull her into his chest.
This, you, Morgan, people I love, people who care.
He's got that now. Pepper says it with such conviction, and it's true. Tony loves that kid with every cell of his body. I know how you get once you've settled on something. You won't rest until he's okay, and I'll be there every step to help. This is too much on his shoulders, but maybe between the two of them they can manage.
You're too good to me, Pep.
I know. She kisses him softly, then presses her face against his neck. He lets himself breathe her in and try to relax. Just next time you go into full parental panic mode and disappear for hours, have Friday call me. He hums an affirmative.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I've gotten used to knowing where you are. I might have overreacted a bit.
That's understandable. I did take your suit and sneak out in the middle of the night.
One day I'll have to accept I can't keep you cooped up here forever.
About that.
He knows why Pepper wants him here. Now that Peter's here too, he's had more incentive to never leave. Except he knows Peter won't be content to stay in the middle of nowhere forever. Not when his friends and the crime are both in the city. Tony's going to have to come back from the dead to be the father Pete needs. Can we talk about it in the morning? Pepper requests. Morgan's going to be up any minute now, and I'm going to have my hands full keeping her away from you and Happy. It can wait just a bit longer now that Peter's asleep down the hall.
Yeah, probably a conversation best had on a good night's sleep, or at least a few hours.
Sleep is seeming more and more appealing as his wife siphons off his stress with each brush of her skin against his, and each soft heartbeat thrumming under his ear. Tony's starting to drift off when she asks, My memories of Peter? Is there a way I can get those back?
Maybe,
he hums. He hopes so, but he doesn't want to explain the necessary trauma. Pete and Pep might not have known each other well enough for that, but Friday could figure it out tomorrow.
Either way, you're gonna love him. He's such a good kid. I thought teenagers were supposed to be monsters, but he's like an angel. A puppy angel. Spider puppy angel.
All right, Loopy, get some sleep. She chuckles and shifts to kiss him on the forehead. He loves her so damn much.
Love your Pots,
he slurs, and she tells Friday to turn off the lights. You're both going to be okay, Tony, she promises as sleep finally claims him. Might take some time, but I'm sure of it. You can rest now. Thank you for listening. I really hope you've enjoyed this chapter. Have a lovely rest of your day.